The name of my brand new book is The Many Faces of George Washington, Remaking a Presidential Icon. The book is really about the creation of the three figures that are the crown jewels in the Education Center at Mount Vernon. Mount Vernon created these three figures with the help of experts in the worlds of history, of art, and of science to really determine what George Washington looked like. We all think we know what George Washington looked like, and that's his image on the dollar bill from Gilbert Stuart. But did he really look like that? That's the premise of my book. When the team of Mount Vernon did forensic studies on what did he really look like, they found a far different George Washington than the one that we see on the $1 bill. As the three figures kind of evolved, it went from science to art, and our incredible artists did the sculpting of these figures to give character to the face, and then it went to another artist to paint the faces in an incredibly real way. And then what had to happen is for George Washington to have clothes. So recreators of authentic 18th century clothing were found to do the clothing that George Washington wears in all three of these figures. Each one was done to be an authentic piece of clothing from the 18th century, and textile experts checked out and investigated George Washington's real clothes so that there's no doubt what his size was, and not only what the size of his clothing pieces were, but how his body fit in those pieces of clothing. So when you go through the Education Center at Mount Vernon and see those three figures, that's exactly what Washington's size would have been as well. So every piece was done by hand. Every boot, every shoe, every shirt, every piece of tack on the blue skin, the horse, all of it done by hand using 18th century methods. Together they're an incredible figures of George Washington at 3 points of his life, at 19, at 45, and 57. My book is not only about the creation of the three figures of George Washington, it's also a biography of George Washington. I write with a 10-year-old child in mind. The reason I do that is I want a 10-year-old child that reads well to be able to read my book and understand it perfectly. But I also have a lot of adult readers. I think the reason that happens with my books is I write it simply, but I write about complex topics. So there are many different layers in the book. I also feel it's very important to use primary source documents as I research my book. So I go all the way back to George Washington's letters, his journals, and the letters and journals of his contemporaries, because I feel like it's absolutely necessary to get the history to be accurate. So all through the book, I've tried to focus really on the fact that George Washington was truly a magnificent man. He was not only the best dancer in Virginia, but he was the best horseman in Virginia. So I want readers of a new generation to see that George Washington, not the old boring and stuffy George Washington on the $1 bill, but the very vibrant and strong and really incredible athlete of George Washington as he really was.